Hey guys, welcome to video 3 for this week. So I'm going to be putting together all the things that we've been learning in the last two videos, everything about FX and fills, and I'm going to be applying that to this track here that I've been working on for the last few weeks, since the beginning really. So you guys should be just as familiar with this track now as I am, since I use it every week as a kind of a guide as to how I would put it together in a track so that you can translate that to your own songs. So for this video, I'll be adding effects and fills to my track and just messing around with techniques that I would use, and I also might be diving into some automation for the MIDI clips themselves, since we introduced you to that in the last video. So I'm just going to have a quick flick through this track and then we'll see what we can add effects and fills wise to it. Okay, so it's definitely lacking some elements through the transitions, kind of just blends. It doesn't really blend, it just switches over to the next part of the track with no anticipation. It kind of just comes out of nowhere. So we can definitely smooth those bits over. The build-up could use a lot more tension, and the drop is a bit lackluster in that it kind of just repeats over and over again, so we can definitely use some fills in there, and then also some effects to go into the break, and then we'll check out this second part here as well. I'll start with the intro. I might add an impact just at the beginning to kind of bring us into the track. Now these impacts at the beginning of the track, I know we've seen them a couple of times now. You don't have to use that technique. I mean, a lot of music doesn't have it. I'm just using it for the sake of the exercise and just to show you where you can use impacts. So I'll be using mostly Splice once again for all these samples, and I might even use some from Ableton as well. As I said, I do like Splice. It has a lot of variety, and it's kind of just the go-to place for all your sample needs, really. This one's quite nice here, clap impact. It's not too in your face. I'm going to bring down the volume quite a bit just so it sits in the background. Now I should probably follow my own rules here because I've been throwing this track together quite quickly. I haven't been naming my tracks, so I'm just going to quickly do that now. When you're naming tracks, just use your best judgment as well. You don't have to name them perfectly into the specific categories that instruments usually sit in. So, you know, synths, lead, drums, that kind of thing. Start out with, you can just name it what the instrument actually is, and then you can categorize it and group it later on when you get to the mixing stage. And like I said, you can use the word vox instead of vocal just to make things a little bit shorter and quicker. Now we'll make a group down here again for my FX, and then I'll just start throwing them all in here. That way it's a little bit more organized as I go through. So I need something to build into here, like a sweep or even a build and drop, downlifter, uplifter, downlifter, but I think a sweep would work here. See what I got. Bit full on. What I might actually do is shorten this down a bit, and you can do this with your effect samples as well. So remember, if we turn warp on and then hold shift, move our mouse to the end here, of the sample, and we get that little bracket with the arrow. Now we can actually shorten that sample a bit. If we leave it on beats, because this is not a rhythm, it is going to sound quite odd, and it'll have some artifacting in it and do some weird stuff. Let's see what it does first. So you can hear on every beat it kind of changes volume quite drastically, whereas we want it to be smooth. So we just switch this to complex, see what we have. Yeah, so that's much more suitable for our track now. It was way too long before. It just kind of started rising here, went all the way to here, and it was just a little bit too much, so I shortened it down. So if you want to do that, just turn warp on, hold shift, and then you can shorten or lengthen your audio tracks. Make sure you do change the warp mode, otherwise it's going to sound weird if you leave it, especially leave it on beats. So complex is usually going to be the one that you'll choose 99% of the time. It'll be the best option. Because it is a noise, you can experiment with something like texture as well. Most of the time I just like to use complex. Now I want to put a fill just before the build up here, but I don't think I want to use an actual drum fill because it's going to sound a little bit out of place. I'll just put one in here just to show you. So I've just thrown in this one I found. So while it does sound cool, it doesn't really fit with our track. Because we've never heard this snare before, we've never heard any of these drums before. And because it's quite mellow, our beats, putting something like this, just dropping it straight in, really sticks out. And that's something I want you guys to avoid as well, is to use just random samples that don't really fit with your track. So make sure you get something that actually suits your song and your genre. So that's definitely not working. Now you don't have to use samples as fills as well. What I'm going to do for this part, I'm actually going to draw in a fill with the drums that we already have. So I'm going to zoom in here. I'm going to split the track just for this last bar. Because we've already got some drums in here, we can use this to add a fill. We don't have to put in some random samples. So I'm going to split the track here for the last bar. So that's split. I'm going to consolidate this. So now this is separate to this loop. And now I can just insert a little fill in here. So I'm going to solo this, and I'm going to loop my little fill section. I probably don't want the kick in there. I'll put the kick on every offbeat. Okay, that's better. At least that actually sounds like our track. We've been using those sounds before. So we're not just introducing some random snares and toms and stuff from a sample. We're actually using drums that we already had and turning that into a fill. So you can, and I recommend that you probably do this instead of just dropping fills in, if you can. Unless you throw some fills in and they sound like they suit the track, then go for it. But if you can't find any that sound good, this is definitely the way to do it. Now for this build up here, I've got these claps that slowly get quicker and quicker. Now that we've learnt about the pitch bend, I'm actually going to do that to this clip here. So I'm going to bring up my envelopes. Now I'm going to select MIDI control, and then I've got pitch bend already selected. So now I'm going to actually pitch this clap itself up for the build up. So last time we did it with noise in the last little exercise. Now I'm going to do it to the clap in my track. So you can hear it slowly rising in pitch there. So remember, this technique can be used on any MIDI clip, as long as you have the pitch bend activated on whatever instrument it is. So it doesn't have to be a synth or anything. You can do it on drums as well, so you can pitch your snares and kicks and claps, whatever, up and down. Just gives you another level of being able to customize your track. Okay, so we definitely need some sort of a riser here through this build up. Okay, I've got this noise riser here. After a bit of searching on Splice. It's in the group. So I'm going to leave warp on for this one, and I'm just going to hold shift. Make that. You can also hold shift and see how it's snapping there. If you hold shift and then you hold control or command, now you can turn off snapping, so you can match it up perfectly to your track. Especially if you don't know what the original BPM was of this sample, which I have no idea. Make sure we put it on, let's try texture. Solo this one. Yeah, so that sounds pretty good. I'll actually leave that little tail there. I'm going to see what it sounds if I actually automated the pitch on the vocals as well. Now, not everything works, so this might sound terrible, but you'll never know if you don't try it. So let's see what this sounds like. No, it's not really working. Sometimes if you have a constant vocal pattern, you can pitch it up over the build-up and it sounds quite impactful, but no, definitely not in this case. Let's get rid of that. I feel like we could use the tonal riser there as well as the sweep. So we'll see what we got. So I'll put this riser in. Now it's quite in your face. I'd probably try and find something else, but just for this exercise I am going to use this one. I've just pulled the volume all the way down to -21. And I might actually put a little bit of reverb on it as well. Put up the dry wet, K-time a little bit. That way it really sits in the back and it's not too painfully obvious. Yeah, so that's subtle, but it still adds quite a bit, and if you take it away, you actually really notice it. And that's what I was saying with effects from the start, is that they're meant to be there, but you don't really notice them until you take them away. Okay, let's look at the fills in the drop. It definitely needs something here. I'm going to use what we've got again. I'm not going to throw in a random fill. So it can be as simple as that. All I did was took away that last kick and then added another couple of claps at the end on the 16th notes. See how that's just enough to keep the track moving along, to keep the listener engaged. As long as you're sort of mixing it up a little bit, it doesn't have to be a full-on drum fill every time. I could probably use a cymbal there as well, so I'm going to get a reverse. Something like this. Just unwarp that and move it into position. Obviously bring that down. I'm going to put a down lifter on that right at the first impact of that drop, just to make it a little bit more impactful. You can also do things like I am here for this last bar, completely taking away the drums. That way it really breaks things up in the middle of that drop there. It's not just doesn't get too repetitive. And then while that's happening, because I got a bit of space there now, might do something a little more with his vocals. I'm going to grab a utility. Remember I showed you this last lesson. So I'm going to actually automate the volume so that these get a little bit louder here when the fill happens. Because there's no drums there's nothing else there, I think the vocal chops can shine through a bit. So yeah, don't be scared of using the utility and automating the volume. That way you can add a bit of variation to your track. Then I'll also automate the reverb. I'll automate the decay time. Also the dry wet. I'll take this fill that I've already done here and I'll just put that back in the last bar here. Okay, and then just before the break I'm going to add in something else. There's a fill. Gonna mix up these velocities a little bit as well. Don't forget those. Okay, definitely need some effects to smooth over this transition. What I'm gonna do is actually add a riser at the end of my drop, which goes into the breakdown. There's something else that you can do. I found this little airplane riser thing. A little more subtle than the other ones I was going through. Okay, I didn't want it to be too much, just a little something to anticipate us into that breakdown. Now I'm going to add a sub drop impact for this part. So it's just one of these. I'm going to bring it down quite a bit. And I've already got this sweep that we've used before. I'm just going to use that for this break as well. Just move it back a little bit. Okay, I've already got what I did here for this build. I'm just going to copy that. See if I can get some atmosphere in here. It's got this little crackling effect in the background now. Just a little atmosphere I found. Just for the intro, because the intro is sort of a little bit too bare for what I'm looking for at the moment. I'll have this carry on as well into the verse. Okay, that's smoothed over quite a bit there. Just adding those effects into our track. It's added a lot more variation, a lot more character. The transitions are much smoother now, so us as a listener, we can hear what's coming up and what's about to happen. It's not like the track's just going through stages and just clicking over to the next stage and then clicking over to the next stage. We're actually being warmed up for what's coming up, and that's kind of the whole point of using effects and this kind of thing. I'm not going to go too overboard with the effects. I'll probably leave it there with the feels and stuff as well. It's very easy to get caught up and just start throwing a ton of effects into your track, and before you know it, it just sounds really bad. So you can definitely overdo it with effects. Listen to your track, figure out which areas are sort of lacking and where transitions aren't really that smooth. And then you can use effects to blend those transitions and just to add a little something to the track. You're not trying to create music from effects. You're using the effects as a little enhancer to your track. Think of effects as like sprinkling salt. You don't want to overdo it, otherwise you'll ruin the dish. So just use it to taste. Same thing with fills, and I do recommend doing fills this way as well. So like I was doing it with it here, actually using the sounds that you already have instead of just throwing in a random drum fill or whatever. If it does fit, then go for it. That's awesome. But I couldn't find anything that would fit this track because it's a little more, it's kind of like it's a weird track. It's kind of dancey but mellow at the same time. So I'm trying to find fills that would sit in there were next to impossible for me. So I ended up just drawing them in myself, and that worked out much better. It's also good practice as well while you're learning to draw in your own fills. That way you can get an idea of how they work and different rhythms and tempos that you can use to mix your track up. So this was just a little video on how I would go about putting effects and fills into my track. We also looked at the pitch bend, and I ended up using that on my MIDI clip here for the build-up. And yeah, the utility as well, which I used for the vocals. So have a play around with your own track, find some samples, whether it be from Splice or just the Ableton samples, wherever you get them from, and just start practicing using FX and fills in your track. That pretty much wraps it up for this video. In the next video, I'll be looking at what we went through for this week, and then I'll also be introducing you to what's coming up next week.